In the heart of winter, after a day of ice skating on the frozen lake, there's nothing more inviting than returning home to a roaring fire and a steaming bowl of soup. And if that soup is filled with chunks of crusty bread, well, that's a perfect day. But what if that bread could talk? What if each bite had a story about the people, the politics, and the parties of the Middle Ages? That would be pretty wild, right? Well, strap in because we're about to serve up a hearty helping of medieval history. You are what you eat. If you've heard that expression, you know that food is more than just fuel. It says something about who we are, where we live, and how we spend our time. For nobles and royalty in the Middle Ages, this was especially true. Meals weren't just about eating. They were a chance to show off their wealth and power. And trust me, they took that chance. First up, let's talk about bread, because not all bread was created equal. While the peasant folks were munching on their coarse, dark loaves made from rye or barley, nobles were biting into fine white bread made from wheat. And not only was this bread tastier, it was also thicker. I'm talking about a good, hearty slice that could double as a plate, a practice known as trenching. You heard that right. Instead of plates, they used bread. A noble's table was a sea of white, not just in the linen used to cover it, but in the bread too. After a meal, those grease-covered trenchers were given to the poor, making for some pretty unique medieval fast food. Now, let's raise a glass to wine, lots and lots of wine. Whether it was spiced or mulled with cinnamon, cloves, or ginger, wine flowed freely at the noble table. Now, these spices weren't just for flavor. They were a sign of luxury and power. I mean, these spices came from far-off lands, like India and China. And getting them to the Middle Ages required some serious boat trips and trading skills. So having them on your table was like showing off, hey, I've got connections. I've got the money for fancy stuff. I'm important. But let's get back to the main event, the food. If you were a noble in the Middle Ages, you probably started your meal with an appetizer, usually a kind of stew. Then came the main course, and oh boy, was it a feast. Roasted venison, swan, peacock, even cranes were regular guests at the noble table. But the most eye-catching dish had to be the roasted peacock with its feathers reattached. Talk about a showstopper. Serving a peacock like that was a real flex, a way to show everyone, look how fancy I am. And then there was the humble chicken. Yeah, that everyday bird we all know. Well, in the Middle Ages, serving a whole chicken was a big deal. Killing a chicken meant losing a potential source of eggs, so it was a somewhat extravagant choice. Only the rich and powerful could afford to waste a chicken when it could be used for future meals. So if you saw a chicken on the menu, you knew you were in for a treat. And don't forget about game meats like deer. Hunting was a big pastime for nobles, and the best cuts of meat went to them while the rest of us got the umbles, the less desirable parts of the animal. Those went to make what we call today a humble pie. So yeah, even for those working at the royal court, there was no shortage of food. And for dessert, it was often a brightly colored custard tart, maybe with some saffron. Saffron was super expensive and rare, so using it made a dessert extra special. It was a way of saying, I'm so fancy I can afford to make my food look amazing. Sometimes sweet and savory dishes were served together, like spiced meats alongside pastries. To us today, that might sound weird, but back then it was a sign of sophistication. Now, eating like a medieval noble wasn't just about the food. It was also about the style. They washed their hands in perfumed water before a meal, never used their left hand when eating, and often had servants carve their meat for them. Eating was a big production, almost like a performance. Instead of the courses we have today, medieval meals were divided into removes, meaning large groups of dishes served all at once. So a noble table was a feast for the eyes as well as the stomach, filled with everything from meats and fish to pastries and sauces. The next time you sit down to a meal, take a moment to think about all the history that goes into a bite of bread or a sip of wine, because just like those medieval nobles, we're all telling a story with every dish. If you enjoyed this peek into medieval dining, hit like and subscribe. Medieval Dreams YouTube channel and hit the notification bell for more journeys into history's hidden details.